macOS Ventura on a 10-year-old MacBook Pro? No problem. Windows 10 on a 2014 Mac Mini? No problem. The question is, can I run Windows 11 on this 10-year-old Mac hardware? It's amazing how long-lasting Apple hardware is. Here on a 2014 Mac Mini, I can install Windows 10 and use it side by side with macOS 13 Ventura, the latest version. And even on the 10-year-old MacBook Pro here from 2012, runs macOS Ventura flawlessly thanks to the hard work of the developers of the OpenCore legacy patcher from Dortania. And the question now is, can I install Windows 11 on this machine? And this would be a good opportunity to just get rid of all the junk that piles up on your macOS. If you use it already for some years and you did some projects and you installed and uninstalled some apps, there are always leftovers. And Clean My Mac X from MacPaw just gets rid of all the junk and deep cleans your macOS, that it runs as fast and smooth as you can, and prepare it very nicely for an update either to Ventura or if you're planning on installing Windows with BootCamp. Down in the video description you find the affiliate link, and if you would use that link and buy the software, you support my channel. Thank you. And by the way, let me give you a little sneak peek to the next video, the ultimate guide of Mac Pro. So you have a Mac Pro 5.1 from 2012 and a Mac Pro 6.1 from 2013 with an eGPU, an external graphic card. I give you the information. Is it still worth buying or upgrading these 10-year-old Macs? What is the performance, and a full detailed tutorial how to connect an eGPU, an external graphic card, to your Mac Pro 6.1, because you cannot change the graphic cards in there. If you haven't yet, I would recommend you subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications so you don't miss the new video and the ultimate guide of Mac Pros. So let's start. The first thing you're gonna do is download the Windows 11 ISO file, the big install file from Microsoft. And therefore you just type in the search bar Windows 11 ISO download. As you can see, if you just scroll down here, you see download Windows 11 disk image, and then you should select the download. There's only one download, that is the Windows 11 Multi Edition. Just select this, say download, and after a short validation you have to choose your language, say confirm, and then you see you can download the 64-bit version. There is no 32-bit version of Windows 11 as it is with Windows 10. Just hit download and it starts downloading the approximately 6 GB ISO file. So after the download is finished, we have to create a USB drive with the Windows setup and the BootCamp drivers. The BootCamp drivers are hardware drivers that Apple provides so that Windows recognizes all the hardware of your Mac. And let's plug the USB drive in. And you find the BootCamp assistant that does that when you go to the Launchpad and then you say Other and BootCamp Assistant. You say Continue, and then you see some check marks. The first one up here is that we want to create a USB drive with the Windows 10 or later setup. That's what we want to do. The second one you cannot uncheck, that is, it always downloads the latest BootCamp drivers. And the last one you have to uncheck if you don't want to install Windows on the machine you're now working with, you're now downloading and creating the USB drive. As we want to do that on that MacBook Pro, I leave this check mark here checked, so it will create some space on my hard drive for Windows. You will see that in a further step. And then we say continue, and it finds my USB drive here, and all data will be deleted on the USB drive, so make sure you don't have any important data on it. And we have to choose a Windows 10 ISO file. And we now choose the Windows 11 ISO file, and we have the USB drive, and then we say continue. We have to enter our password, and now it starts formatting the USB drive, copying all the Windows setup files, and then downloading and installing the BootCamp drivers and copying that on the USB drive, so we have one USB drive with everything on it to install Windows 11. So the USB drive has been created, and now comes what was checked in the last check mark if you want to install Windows on the current Mac. So now you have to set the size of the Windows partition if you only have one hard drive. And then you can just move the slider here and make it larger or smaller. And I recommend, for instance, this is a 265 gigabyte SSD. I just give Windows 100 gigabytes and there's 139 for macOS. So that should be fine. Say install, and now it's partitioning the disk on my MacBook Pro. And then we can do a restart and start the install of Windows 11 from the USB drive. So here we are in the Windows setup, and if we say next and we say we don't have a product key and we just choose any Windows edition like Windows 11 Home, it says this PC can't run Windows 11. So we have to do a registry hack, and that is we just say Shift and F10, then we are in the command and we say regedit, and then we go to HKey local machine, system, setup, and in here we say edit new key, and this key is lab config, and in this key we say edit new, and then we say dword 32-bit value, bypass TPM check, make a double click, and we say value is 1. Then we say edit new dword 32-bit value, bypass secure boot check, make a double click, say value is 1. And if you don't have 8 gigabytes of RAM, we say dword and we say bypass RAM check, and we make a double click and say value is 1 as well. Then we can close and we say exit here, and if we now go to next, I don't have a product key, Windows 11 Home, you see we can accept the software license, say next, and the checks are bypassed. And then we choose the BootCamp partition, and it says that Windows cannot be installed because it's MBR partition table and it needs a GPT disk. The BootCamp assistant changed the hard disk that was fully GPT into a hybrid between GPT and MBR, and Windows just sees it not as the correct format. So what do we have to do? There is a tool, I can give you the link down in the video description, that just recreates a fully GPT hard disk out of this hybrid thing, and then Windows setup should see it as GPT as it is required. That doesn't happen on newer Macs, because if they are fully EFI compliant, they boot in an EFI mode and then they need this hybrid hard disk mode, but the old MacBook Pro boots into a non-EFI, into a legacy boot, and so this is why the setup doesn't work. So let's start the tool and let's convert the hard disk and start the Windows setup again. And now we start the terminal and we run sudo gdisk/dev/disk0. And here you can see that it found a valid GPT with hybrid MBR. We can just enter P to view the partition table, and there we see number 3, the BootCamp partition, 93.9 gigabytes. Then we enter the expert command with X, we say N, and then we say W to save the changes. And now it has written a new GUID partition table GPT to disk 0. So if we start this again, now we see that it found a valid GPT with protective MBR. It's not a hybrid anymore. And here we are. Where do you want to install Windows? I selected the BootCamp partition and there is no error message here. And then we can go on and start the install of Windows 11 on a 2012 MacBook Pro. Oh, there's the first blue screen of death. So let's see if it can handle that error and maybe after some restarts can manage to boot into Windows. Okay, another blue screen. So unfortunately it doesn't look like Windows 11 is capable of running on this old MacBook Pro, even though we tweaked the hard disk and everything. But as it's now already prepared for Windows and we already set it to a pure GPT hard disk, let's try Windows 10. And that is the same procedure. Just download the Windows 10 ISO, create a USB drive with BootCamp Assistant, and then we gonna use this boot drive and we try to install Windows 10. Okay, another blue screen. So as Windows 10 is obviously also not working on the MacBook Pro, I did some research. I got a tip, like create a USB drive with Windows 8.1 setup, install Windows 8, and then do the update in Windows to Windows 10. If that works, we can try to do the update to Windows 11 and see if we can work ourselves from Windows 8 to 10 to 11. Let's go. So this works. We got Windows 8.1 running on the Mac Pro 2012. But as I didn't create the USB drive with BootCamp, there are no drivers, no BootCamp drivers for Windows 8 here on the stick. So we just use the Windows 10 BootCamp USB drive. So we swap the drives and then we install BootCamp to have all devices ready with the drivers in Windows 8. And since we have the stick already then in, we can start the upgrade from the USB drive to Windows 10. So in the folder BootCamp on the USB drive, there is a setup exe where we can just install BootCamp on Windows. And this should give us the required drivers to have everything set up and ready in Windows 8 of this MacBook, and then we do the upgrade. So now the display got black, the MacBook is still running, I can feel the warm air coming up here just during the install of the BootCamp drivers. So gonna restart it and check if it's still working. So let's just remove the Windows 8 USB drive and insert the Windows 10 USB drive that we created. And I start the Windows setup from the USB drive as an update. Let's see if that works. So this is the second restart, and let's hope that Windows 10 now boots up until the desktop. Oh no, the blue screen of death. This MacBook Pro is not able to run Windows 10 or even Windows 11. But then I have a MacBook Air from 2013 that has a 4th generation Intel chip, and this should be completely EFI already, and this should be able to run Windows 10 same as the Mac Mini from 2014 does. So let's switch the MacBooks to the MacBook Air 2013 and install Windows 10 with BootCamp over there. So I was right, the MacBook Air 2013 is nearly hardware identical to the Mac Mini, and that is one of the first EFI devices. So Windows 10 setup worked flawlessly. Let's try if you have a Windows 10 with all drivers up and running, if the update to Windows 11 maybe works. You need the trick with the registry just to bypass the TPM check, the secure boot check. If you want to know how to do that, it's in the beginning of the video. So let's update the Windows 10 with all drivers, with all updates, with all patches, and then see if we can update it to Windows 11. That looks new, and that looks like the setup of Windows 11. So we nearly made it. We have the Windows 11 setup up and running on a MacBook Air 2013 with a 4th generation Intel i5 processor. But now Windows 10 just gave us at this point the opportunity to just continue with a limited setup without internet connection, but Windows 11 doesn't. It requires an internet connection, so there is no offline setup possible. Lucky for me, I have a Thunderbolt 2 to Ethernet adapter that just came with my MacBook Air here. So I will connect this one now via Ethernet to my router and give it internet connection, and hopefully I can finish the setup then and we have Windows 11 up and running. Okay, this doesn't work either. I think because the Thunderbolt drivers are not initialized as well, and so it doesn't recognize the Ethernet adapter here. When you just read the having trouble getting connected note here, you should browse to aka.ms/network setup for help on another device. Here, when you scroll down a little bit, it says, okay, you can just put your network drivers on a different device and then use the command, the Windows command, to just map the USB drive and give Windows 11 those drivers. And as we have the BootCamp drivers on the USB stick, it will show up the Wi-Fi networks and let me connect to it, because otherwise you cannot continue the Windows 11 setup. So the manual install of the Wi-Fi drivers seem to have worked, because now we see the Wi-Fi networks and I should be able to connect to my Wi-Fi and continue the setup of Windows 11. Okay, we made it. Windows 11, search for updates, so that shows us it's online. The Wi-Fi driver that we installed manually worked, so it got a Wi-Fi internet connection, and now we can continue to set up Windows 11 on our 2013 MacBook Air. Finally, Windows 11 on a 2013 MacBook Air, 10-year-old Mac hardware. It's obviously not supported because this MacBook here has no TPM, has no secure boot, and as I have Windows 7 now on my MacBook Pro, because Windows 8 wasn't even able to install the BootCamp drivers. With Windows 7 it worked out of the box. I could try to upgrade Windows 7 to Windows 10 because now all drivers are there and we know how to add maybe Wi-Fi drivers, but with Windows 10 you can do an offline install. And here you can see it has the same problem as Windows 11 with the MacBook Air. It doesn't recognize the Wi-Fi drivers. At least it can recognize the Ethernet connection. But here with Windows 10 you have the option to say I don't have internet, and then you continue with a limited setup just offline. And now comes the big question: if the BootCamp installer works and if the driver installation doesn't kill us Windows 10 again, let's see if this runs through. So the tip I got was right. I got Windows 7 installed, up and running, and did the upgrade in Windows, and the Windows 10 setup just worked and installed. Everything is fine. Now the BootCamp drivers, oh, they already finished installing the BootCamp drivers. So let's do a restart and see if Windows 10 now is up and running and recognizes all the hardware of the MacBook Pro 2012. So as this MacBook is not EFI hardware, it's legacy hardware with a BIOS similar hardware, you have to have the Option or Alt key pressed to select Windows from the Apple boot selector. If I would just select the OpenCore loader EFI boot like I did on the MacBook Air, you don't see Windows. Because Windows, you remember we had to change the hard disk setup. Windows is not installed in UEFI mode, but in legacy MBR mode. So let's just restart this MacBook again. Keep the Alt or Option key pressed. And here you can select either OpenCore to load macOS or Windows to load Windows 10. And now let's see if Windows 10 with the BootCamp drivers installed boots and if the hardware is recognized correctly. And then we have Windows 10 at least on a 11-year-old MacBook Pro 2012. There's the device manager and all hardware is recognized, all drivers are installed, Windows 10 is up and running. So maybe we try to upgrade now to Windows 11. Let's see. That's the Windows 11 setup, and that looks very promising that we can make it even on this old MacBook Pro. So we made it at least to Windows 11 setup, and now it's asking for internet connection, and as we had with the MacBook Air, there is no I don't have internet and do an offline install option with Windows 11. But one difference to the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro has an Ethernet port, and we don't need like a Thunderbolt to Ethernet adapter, whatever, which is not recognized. And here you see that the Ethernet port is already recognized. The hardware is recognized, but it just says no connected. So I just get an Ethernet cable, plug it in, and it should be online, be able to search for the updates and finish the installation. So this worked as well. I don't know, out of my mind that we got Windows 11 with the bypass TPM secure boot and RAM check up and running on this 11-year-old MacBook. Now comes the BootCamp installation. That is a final step if we can make it, if we can install all drivers, if Windows recognizes all the hardware. And then I have two old MacBooks, MacBook Pro 12 and MacBook Air 13, with the latest Windows and the latest macOS. Let's go. There we are at the finish line. Windows 11 running on a 11-year-old MacBook Pro. So basically, if you want to install Windows 10 on a MacBook, you can start around 2013, like my MacBook Air, that is EFI, and that's quite easy with BootCamp. It might be tricky to get Windows 11 up and running though, but you see some hints, hopefully some useful hints in the video. And if nothing helps, maybe you go the way that I went with the MacBook Pro. You install Windows 7, then go to 10, then go to 11, always as an upgrade in Windows, and it helps that all the drivers are already installed and the hardware is recognized for the setup, that it doesn't crash. And stay tuned for my next video, the Ultimate Mac Pro Guide. You already got a little sneak peek. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day. See you soon here on my channel. Bye bye.